Hello and welcome back to the UCLA Bruins Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Ferguson, writer for UCLA on SI. Today we're going to be taking a look at how UCLA can turn things around following back-to-back ugly losses. But before we get started, I want to thank everyone now who's listening, Apple Music, Spotify, or even YouTube. It all means a lot to me and I can't thank you enough. So to kind of set the stage, UCLA has struggled. I mean, that is, if you're watching this, you're obviously aware of this. UCLA has looked terrible in both games to Michigan and Michigan State. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Defensively, the Bruins have looked helpless. Obviously, it's going to be a challenge facing those two teams because we know how good they are. Michigan, I think, is like top 10 in the country in offensive production, and that is simply just a hard matchup for UCLA no matter what. They have better players on the front court and, the back court with some of the guards they have. Same goes for Michigan State. Jeremy Fears played excellent against UCLA. But just like things like that have really hurt UCLA. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Obviously, the backcourt guards of Donovan Dent, Sky Clark, and Perry. Not as much Sky Clark. He has played good defense. I've seen it. He's been able to get blocks, from beyond the arc, and I thought that is just a testament to how good of a defensive player he is. But kind of looking at them, obviously there have been some matchup concerns. They have been on the end of a few very ugly defensive breakdowns that have really caused momentum to shift in both of these losses. Moving forward, they need to really zero in on what is going on. Obviously they're hitting the film, doing things right that they think they are. They're all going to say that they had a great practice, but again, we're not really seeing that right now. Both guards, Donovan Dent and Trent Perry have seen a hit of production. I think Dent at one point was averaging like 18 points in, the games leading up to, Michigan and then obviously Michigan State. In those games after, he has not really been that big time player UCLA has needed. Trent Perry, I think this is just a matter of fatigue. He is starting to struggle, so we might see Sky Clark slide back into the starting lineup. Mick Cronin wants to see lineup changes, and I think we will get it in their next game against Illinois. Obviously a very tough matchup for any guard. Keaton Wagler has been amazing this season, and that is, a player who could really turn things up against UCLA. But again, I thought they did well. Braden Smith, for example, I thought, Dent, Perry, I thought they played well. The things that they needed to do, they didn't really do, in the Michigan and Michigan State game. For example, Braden Smith is like top 3 in the Big Ten in assists per game against, UCLA. We really saw him struggle. He had a turnover to really set up the game-winning shot that allowed UCLA to take the win. I wanted to see them do that against Fears. Obviously, that did not happen. So again, another prominent guard having a good game against UCLA. That cannot happen moving forward. On the front court side of things, Tyler Bilodeau has played well. Obviously, there's not many ways you can critique Tyler Bilodeau. He's UCLA's most consistent and best scorer when he wants to be. Obviously, we have seen him kind of ghost out half to half. But honestly, no really complaints about Tyler Bilodeau. He's leading the team in rebounds now. After Eric Daly Jr. has really struggled to get things going like he had before, these last 2 games where he has just been a ghost. I think he had 3 points or something against Michigan State. So again, that is just a testament of how much he is struggling right now. And slumps are going to happen, but if he can't get things going, I think UCLA will be in a bad spot. Xavier Booker, he's a hard one as well. I mean, like Daly, he's really kind of slowed his roll in these last couple of games after playing well on the defensive side. And again, UCLA doesn't really have anyone else who on the front court. I mean, Jamerson, but we know what happened. I think Mick Cronin is upset with him. Maybe he'll give him a chance to prove himself against Illinois, but still, it's unlikely for, Mick Cronin to, want to, give into that and like, oh, I'll give you a second chance. He was really mad. To reject your own player in the middle of a game is obviously going to cause a lot of problems defensively for the Bruins. And what I mean by that is Mick Cronin asked for more physicality. I think in a conference, he said he wanted like a Eastern European who's vodka drinking, who's fought bears or something like that. And then when Jamerson does this, he fouls, he plays hard, even down 20. Obviously, there's 2 ways to look at it. You're down 20. Why are you trying that hard? You're down 20. Play at 100%. But again, Mike Cronin ejecting him, that sends mixed signals to the entire roster. And obviously, that is not going to be a good sign for UCLA. I mean, I might be overstating this, obviously, but if you're UCLA's players and you're going to go for a foul or go for a block shot, you don't want to be scared that you might be ejected. Again, that's probably not the mentality, but still that is something that we've seen, especially, with the Mick Cronin situation with Steven Jamerson. So again, it's going to be hard for UCLA to kind of bounce back defensively. We're already at the end of the season pretty much. And, if UCLA's defense hasn't, picked up a step by now, they're probably not going to finish out the season very strong. And with all the drama surrounding the team, all the outside voices, there's obviously going to be a lot of pressure on them already. So it might be harder for them to really, play confident, play basketball the way they want to. Because again, there's just a really crappy situation if you're on UCLA right now. But next, offensively, UCLA has obviously gone up against some really tough defenses. Michigan and Michigan State are both very elite defending teams, and we saw them make huge adjustments throughout the game to really slow UCLA. I haven't seen UCLA make many adjustments throughout the games to really, counter these, and that might fall on Mick Cronin. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but for example, against Michigan State, the Spartans went on a 18-0 run, and Mick Cronin really failed to adjust for that, and that blew the game wide open, and UCLA lost the game by the 6-minute mark of the first half. Again, moving forward against Illinois, teams of that matter, like Nebraska, obviously Mick Cronin needs to be better at making those adjustments. You can't have one plan, and then when it goes wrong, stick to it, because that's just not going to win. We saw how well Michigan, adjusted to UCLA. The Bruins were, I think, 38-40 to end the first half. They were down 2. And then obviously we saw how that game ended. Michigan would win by, 30 points. And again, just a very, poor coaching performance and performance on the players. Obviously, you're not going to win games if you're shooting under 30% or 40% as a team, while the other team is shooting 50%. Again, that's just not how you're going to win games. There's, they might have been able to get away with it against, teams like Northwestern, Oregon for that matter. But still, UCLA really needs to figure out what's going on offensively, how Mick Cronin will be able to adjust to fix these issues and things like that. But again, looking ahead, it's going to be a very hard stretch for UCLA, USC, Minnesota, Nebraska, and then USC again to end the season. Those are going to be tough matchups. I think UCLA should be able to beat USC, Minnesota, and USC again if they are able to, fix some of these issues. But again, it's much easier said than done. Obviously, this late into the season, it's really hard to, break those bad habits that they have already made. But I want to talk about more into Mick Cronin and that kind of situation, like what's going on with him. Obviously, we saw against Michigan State when he ejected Jamerson. That sends a message to the entire locker room. And, his actions post-game, there's two views on that too. I personally thought it was funny, but again, seeing a coach lash out like that is really unprofessional, and you don't want to see that, especially if you're a player. That's an embarrassment for not only the program itself, but, the players having to play for that. But again, it really seems like Mick Cronin is starting to give up on this team. Again, I don't know what Mick Cronin's thinking, but again, if you're going to eject your player, make a fool of yourself in the post-game press conference, there's going to be a lot of voices. He's a $22.5 million buyout without cause. So again, he might just be over it. He might be done. His actions point to that, obviously. Again, I don't know if they're calculated, right? It might have just been a heat of the moment ejecting Jamerson like that. But again, like I said, it sends a message to the locker room, right? Cronin is not, sticking up for his players like he's supposed to be. If, a player fouls, you don't, be on the side of the refs or Michigan State. You want to be supporting your player through that, not throwing him out in front of a arena of 14,000 people. And, obviously the game was on Peacock, so national TV. There's obviously going to be a lot of things that are going to be said in the locker room, a lot of mixed messages, like I said before, right? You want more physicality, but then you eject your player for being physical. That is going to hurt a locker room. And like I said, not standing by your players is also going to hurt the locker room as a whole. Mick Cronin is obviously a very vocal coach. He says what he wants. He's said that he chews people out in front of everyone at practice. He's not afraid of hiding it. He doesn't do these one-on-ones with his players. So again, his coaching style is a little, erratic, a little scary, especially if you're a player who, missed a layup or a free throw, right? those like pressures are going to hurt you as a team. But honestly, if the message is different in the locker room, I think the Bruins have a good chance of turning things around. Maybe this is the turning point they need, to see your coach that fired up. Maybe that gives them more motivation to play better. But again, in a new era of NIL and stuff like that, they're just waiting to get their next paycheck on a new team or even the NBA. So again, I think a lot of these players have checked out. They're looking into the future, and Mick Cronin's actions against Michigan State really reinforce that. It's a daunting reality, of course, if you're a Bruins fan. But again, UCLA has just not looked good in these last 2 games, and back-to-back games like that. And then, maybe even a third against Illinois, because Illinois is not a team you want to play with. And if UCLA is not up to playing 100%, that could be an easy loss. But to turn things around, on a more positive note, I feel like if they beat Illinois, there's a chance they can make a really good run to end out the season. Again, Nebraska might be a hard game, but if they can pick up that game, if they fix some of these issues like defensively and, offensively, I think the Bruins could be in a good spot. But again, there's just that shroud of Mick Cronin really hurting the team as a whole right now, not making adjustments. Obviously, what I mentioned earlier, humiliating your players. That's a way you lose your locker room. But it's obviously going to be interesting to see how they, respond to these things. But again, that's all. That's just what's been going on lately for UCLA. But that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed. And again, 4's up and have a good day.